What blew me away is when you see the politicians, the folks who are voting, who will sit there and look at the lobbyists and ask, well, is this bill okay for you? Do you like the way that this is worded? And I was shocked to see how much control and power these individuals have, whose interest is by definition is going to be for, their client. It's perverse.
It is. And if you watch the way the politicians work, it wouldn't surprise you, because every night there's a free happy hour put on by a lobbying group. Everybody goes there and they want to find out, where's the free food, where's the free booze, where's the party at? And that's what they do every night. And it's no wonder these lobbyists have such power.
With us is Chris Anders, State Delegate for West Virginia, and just finishing off with your session where you've had quite an interesting bit of floor fights. Tell us about that.
Wow, it's very interesting. Everybody looks at West Virginia and they think, well, you have 91 Republicans and only 9 Democrats in the House. Well, we have 91 people who ran on the Republican ticket. But when it came down to it, I would guess no more than 30, at the most 35, are actually what normal people would consider a Republican. Because, and now, don't get me wrong, they're always right on gun issues. But if you take the gun issue off the table, then they might as well be card-carrying members of the Communist Party. Some of the fights that we had. It's amazing, the big government-itis that's happening in Charleston. And, the fact is, to be elected in West Virginia, you have to run as a Republican, right? We have many members who were elected before as Democrats. They were, Democrat Party members. Then they switched to Republican because they realized that they wanted to stay in power. They had to run as a Republican, but they certainly don't legislate like one.
One of the big issues that you were telling me about, and I still find this fascinating, and I did a little research on this, is the religious freedom exemption for vaccines, medical freedom. And you're one of, I think, 5 states that doesn't have a religious exemption piece. This is a piece from the governor that he wanted to see pushed to have a religious exemption, and it failed in the House.
Yeah, that's correct. What happened is, before the session began, Governor Morrissey put in an executive order for philosophical and religious exemptions of forced vaccination for school children. At that point, there were bills that went in both in the state Senate and in the state House of Delegates, which I'm a member of. The bill came quickly out of the state Senate, which actually is a more conservative branch now in West Virginia. It quickly came out, it passed fully intact, and came over to the House, where it immediately stopped. Yeah, I was a member of the Health Committee. And the Health Committee has 25 members. It's a major standing committee, of which there are 3 Democrats, actual Democrats. Then there are probably another dozen undocumented Democrats, which I spoke of at the beginning, and maybe 4 or 5 real conservatives. So when the bill hit, it was immediately gutted. We have a lot of what I lovingly call educrats also in West Virginia. These are those that are institutionalized. They're doctors. They are nurse practitioners, and they want to keep everything exactly the same because of the pressure they get from their employer and the pressure they get from the hospital association and Big Pharma. So what happened is the bill, even though we fought, the handful of conservatives in the committee fought as hard as we could, the bill was gutted and ended up coming out to the floor just as an expanded medical exemption to forced vaccination. Well, when it hit the floor, many of us in the Liberty Freedom Caucus put in many amendments to try to restore it. Okay, I put in an amendment to restore the governor's executive order. Delegate Coop Gonzalez put in an amendment to restore the bill as it came from the Senate. Laura Kimball put in an amendment, which mirrored her bill, which was the most expansive, which just said saying no is good enough. They would eliminate all vaccine requirements in West Virginia. Of course, we fought this out on the floor for many, many hours. We heard everything from certain religious groups, like apparently, and I'm not Catholic, so I'm not trying to insult Catholics, but the Catholic Church was against removing or putting in religious and philosophical differences, which I have many friends that are Catholic, and I had never heard that before, but that came up on the floor 5 or 6 times. People kept arguing how we're all going to have measles and we're all going to die, and they couldn't grasp the fact that West Virginia is, just one of 5 states that doesn't allow religious exemptions. Just one of 5. And we're not getting rid of vaccinations at all. We just don't want to use government, which are people with guns, to force you to have your child vaccinated to attend government schools. But, and this very bill passed last year. It's like 58 to 42 out of the House. Now we have a new crop of legislators, which I thought maybe we went more conservative, but apparently I was wrong because it died 42 to 56, almost the same exact number flipped. So the bill died on the floor on 3rd reading, and it was a long fight. There were hours of debates. I was standing at one point, beating my copy of the Constitution on my desk, saying how, the government has no authority legally or morally to tell you what you have to put in your body. I even quoted Patrick Henry a few times because the debate ironically happened the day after the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry giving his Liberty or Death speech in St. John's Church in Richmond. So we fought very hard, but in the end, we lost. Thankfully, the governor's executive order is still in place unless it's overturned by the court, or perhaps we can get it done in special session or next year. But I was amazed by the number of lobbyists that showed up. We're delegates. We make around $20,000 for the time that we're down at the Capitol, or running around in $100 suits, right? And then you had all these lobbyists show up making $200,000 to $300,000 in $2,000 suits, and they would bring every medical student they could find in a lab coat out and claim how we're going to kill everybody. So it was a really hard fight. The speaker noticeably was absent for that vote. He was not even on the floor. He claimed he had a court date or something, but the speaker wasn't there. The majority leader wasn't there. A lot of people skipped out on that vote.
Sounds like a lot of cowardice to me.
Yeah. Everybody just ran for cover. So, but we're not giving up. We're going back. We're hitting it again. We're reintroducing our legislation. We're going to fight for it. Hopefully, I talked to the governor. He may have a special session to push through his executive order and codify it into law, with also perhaps doing certificate of need repeal, because there was a lot of good bills die because of the way the health committee is now made up and the influence of the hospital association and big pharma.
It just shocks me, because when you told me this, I was surprised because of how red West Virginia is. And this isn't something that you would think from just knowing how Republican politics are now, that would be something that would exist, to say that you are forced to have to take these particular types of vaccines. And it just shocks me to hear West Virginia being one of the 5 or so states that still requires this. Why do you think, at the end of the day, especially with the governor having an executive order, the governor putting a mandate in to see his legislation pass? I mean, this is a man who just won the seat. Why do you think they objected so harshly to this?
Well, I think there's several reasons. First of all, again, West Virginia voters are red. The voters are conservative, right? The politicians, not so much. And like I said, they run as Republicans when they're really just undocumented Democrats. There's also a lot of anger inside of the House towards the governor. I heard certain delegates even called the governor a munchkin live on radio. The man from New Jersey. Keep in mind, this is the first real Republican governor we've ever elected, because Jim Justice was not elected initially as a Republican. He was a Democrat, and then he switched because Donald Trump came to the state. But he also governed like I guess a blue dog Democrat, right? So, in West Virginia, they know not to touch the gun issue. Like, we can have loaded AR-15s in our car and drive anywhere. We have constitutional carry. 18-year-olds can carry with a permit. We're trying to get that, do some constitutional carry cleanup to allow them to carry without begging the government's permission and paying a tax down to 18 years old. They're not touching the gun issue at all, right? Because they know guns, they will automatically lose their seat. If they take on the Second Amendment lobby. But when it comes to everything else, like I said, they might as well be communist. It was interesting. Between that, the Certificate of Need repeal fight, also I had legislation in, and the accompanying bill passed the state Senate to ban the trafficking of abortion pills in West Virginia. Because keep in mind, we are a life at conception state. And that also died in the health committee and would not move. And I tried to discharge that. And yeah, it's just amazing. They claim to be Republican. They claim to be conservative. They campaign like it. Their mailers say it. They give campaign speeches. But when it comes down to it, they roll over and go back to their Democrat roots. That's why the upcoming primary in 2026 is going to be so vital. And I've told people, if you look, the general election mostly doesn't matter in West Virginia because, the state went, 72% for Trump. So all you have to do is get past the primary. So, I'm hoping, because we forced so many votes, if they didn't want to touch the bills, we would do everything from put amendments on bills and roll call them I did 2 discharge votes, which are pulling the bills off of committee, trying to ram them to the floor to get them passed. And those were roll called. So we have them on record. Now it's up to the voters to do something about it.
I think it's really important that you're doing the roll call. And for folks who don't understand that, that's where you are making sure that the issue is coming up for a vote, that they have to say yes or no on a particular issue. And it's something that the undocumented Democrats, I like that term, they try to avoid as much as possible because they want to do everything they can from going on the record and saying, this is where I really stand on this. And so I'm sure that they absolutely love you for getting them on the record on all these issues for primary season. Oh, they must be a huge favorite there at the caucus.
Oh, I'm just beloved. There wasn't a day going by that I wasn't screamed at or yelled at or threatened in the hall by somebody. They were extremely furious. I mean, even if you look at some of the low-hanging fruit, things like banning, the chemical castration of minors, puberty blockers in minors, which we did get passed. But there were a lot of Republicans that voted against that. We banned state.
I don't understand that. And that's even a big polling issue, a huge polling issue. Republicans and Democrats combined, I think it's something like, it's like 70% or something. I mean, it's not a popular piece.
Yeah, it would be easy.
And they're still resisting it.
Taxpayer-funded DEI. A bunch of Republicans voted against that. Passing the Parents' Bill of Rights. A bunch of Republicans voted against that. Okay? Again, if you'd have rolled out a gun issue like we did, like I was the co-sponsor on Delegate Gonzalez's Firearms Manufacturer Liability Protection Act, which was, to protect all the frivolous lawsuits like happening in New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts against gun manufacturers, that sailed through 91-9, as you would expect it. 91 Republicans, 9 Democrats. At the same time, we had several Democrats coming over and voting with us on conservative legislation, whereas the undocumented Democrats, the Republicans that we spoke of, were voting against us. So it's everything's blurred in West Virginia, and it's funny because registration is by party. You have party line registration. You have to, starting in 2026, be a member of the Republican Party to vote in a Republican primary. We have closed primaries. The key is, we have to make sure that the people get involved and they understand just how much they were sold at. I mean, certificate of need, that should have been repealed. I mean, maybe your audience isn't familiar with that, but we have this antiquated medical system that, let's say you have a hospital in the county and the competitor wants to come in and open up a competing hospital, that whole free market, competition, right, bring prices down. You have to get the existing hospital's permission to open up your hospital. That's ridiculous. It's like having McDonald's in a town and Burger King can't show up because McDonald's doesn't want them there. That was shot down. That was all big pharma showing up, the hospital association showing up and lining people's campaign coffers with donations to get them to vote against this. Because West Virginia has some of the worst health outcomes in the nation. We have a lot of vaccine injury. We have a lot of heart issues, diabetes everywhere. And so we were trying to expand scope of practice. We were trying to eliminate forced vaccination. We were trying to open up so new medical providers could bring in new innovation and open up new facilities to better serve the citizens of West Virginia. And all of those ideas were shot down. They were shot down time and time and time again.
It's awful. One of the things I encourage folks who are interested in politics is just go to a committee hearing or a subcommittee hearing, because that's where a lot of the work is done. I mean, I'm sure it's the same thing in West Virginia. In Virginia, at least, it certainly is. And you'll see lobbyist after lobbyist after lobbyist who will go up and oppose things that are good for people just because it's going to affect their industry or affect their paycheck or their client's paycheck, which, I mean, obviously that's what a lobbyist is going to do in that case. But what blew me away is when you see the politicians, the folks who are voting, who will sit there and look at the lobbyists and ask, well, is this bill okay for you? Do you like the way that this is worded? And I was shocked to see how much control and power these individuals have, who interest is by definition is going to be for, their client. While the politician who's supposed to have the interest in the citizen, the person who voted for them, is looking at them and asking them, well, how do you want this worded? Does this work for you? Hey, it's perverse.
It is. And if you watch the way the politicians work, it wouldn't surprise you, because every night there's a free happy hour put on by a lobbying group. Every night there's free food put on by a lobbying group. Every day at lunch, some lobbying group is bringing in free food. I was proud of the fact I did not go to one happy hour, one dinner, or did not eat one single mouthful of any lobbyist food. I refused to. But everybody goes there and they want to find out, where's the free food? Where's the free booze? Where's the party at? And that's what they do every night. And it's no wonder these lobbyists have such power. I mean, the legislature got so bad. The House actually passed a bill, you ready for this one? To exempt themselves from FOIA. The House, because they want to make up their own rules, put the fox in charge of the hen house, so nobody could, use the Freedom of Information Act to find out the communication between politicians and lobbyists. Now, I, of course, fought and voted against that, along with probably about 20 others, but they passed it. Now it died in the Senate, thankfully, so people can still use the Freedom of Information Act, but that they realized that the spotlight was being put on them regarding how they were voting by their, whether it was the, religious exemption to vaccines, CON, repeal, and numerous other things. They realized we were tying them to the lobbyists. So then what did they do? They tried to prevent anybody from finding out their real ties to lobbyists. These are people these representatives are supposed to work for the people. Right? They're supposed to be as absolutely transparent as possible. And they're trying to stay off record on votes. They try to get by with voice votes, and we have to force them to actually do a roll call vote. And they're trying to hide any communications they're having in writing with these lobbying groups. So we need a major change in West Virginia. We really do. I've talked to 8 or 9 people who are going to be running for the first time to primary some of these undocumented Democrats. I'd like to see about 30 more, because we have a ton of work to do, because West Virginia and Mountaineers are always supposed to be free. Well, sure, yeah, as far as your gun rights, you're secure. Everything else, from civil asset forfeiture to Open Fields Doctrine to what you have to jab in you or your child's body, the list goes on and on and on. It's just like the Smart City Initiative they just started in Marion County, where they're using facial recognition to track people on a 28-hour rolling cycle. And I put in a bill to end that, and I couldn't get that to move either, because they're all like, well, the police need this for something. So we're going to violate everybody's constitutional rights.
It's a mess. The Open Fields Doctrine, I would love to go into that for just a little bit more. And as we wrap this up, the idea, and for those who don't understand, because I didn't recognize this when I first got into politics either, but it's essentially a law that allows the police to monitor anywhere that you'd be able to view from the public road. So if a police officer would be able to stay on the side of the road and be able to see it, this doctrine allows them to take a camera and put it there as well, 24/7, being able to record everything that you possibly do without a warrant. And
Right.
I remember asking in Virginia about the policy for this with what are the conservation police, essentially, and asked them what their policy was with this.
Yeah. I call them the
Yeah,
policy.
you know what they answered to me? I asked them, I said, so what's your policy if a DCR police officer wants to be able to set up one of these cameras and record someone? What happens? Like, what's the policy with this? And what they responded back to me is, well, there really isn't a policy. It's up to the police officer. And it's like, well, what about all of the constitutional protections of, get a warrant first before you're able to do that? Well, no, we don't have to do that. Open Fields Doctrine. We can just go ahead and set up a camera and record without any oversight. They just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and then not only it's any place outside the confines of your house, they can search. So people have large pieces of property and farms. DNR, Department of Natural Resources Police, which I lovingly call the possum cops, they can just go onto anybody's property at any time. They can't go inside of your house, but they can put cameras up. They can monitor you. I remember we had the big hunting and fishing day at the Capitol, and so I'm down there because I'm a big hunter. I'm a big bow hunter, and I'm down there talking to the different groups, and they had a list of bills to oppose that DNR told them to oppose. And it was my repeal of the Open Fields Doctrine. It was forcing these DNR law enforcement officers who have more power than the state police to have to get a warrant before you were searched. It was to stop you from having to pay for a hunting license to hunt on private property. Now, you can hunt on your own private property in West Virginia without a license, but the farmer next door lets me hunt there. If I have the farmer's permission, why do I need the king's permission too? Right. So I put in that bill. They were just stunned that someone actually put in that bill to allow baiting on public property. I mean, private property. It's your property. You want to bait for deer? Bait for deer. Bait for bear? Bait for bear. It's your property, right? So I got in a big argument with the possum cops that day. They thought I was some anti hunting nut, and I've hunted since I was 6 years old, but I just want people to be free. All this boils down around freedom, right? Whether you're free to bear arms, or you're free to choose what medicines you're put in your or your child's body, to you're free to open up a medical center without begging the government's permission, to hunt on your own property how you want, free to your privacy to be left alone. I mean, again, our state motto: Mountaineers are always free. But that's the biggest lie I've ever seen in my life. It's stamped in our state motto. And that needs to change, because everybody will they're catered to certain groups, and freedom works okay over here, but doesn't work over there. No, you have a right to be free and to be left alone by government. And we're working really hard now to get rid of the income tax. I had one of the biggest fights I had was stopping a sales tax increase. With 32 out of 34 seats in the state Senate being Republicans, and 91 out of 100 seats in the House of Delegates being Republicans, on the last day, we defeated Senate Bill 748, which was a 1% sales tax increase, because they want to grow government too. And you got to love the way they name it. They named it the Safer Communities Act, because it was going to fund first responders and the police and fire departments, just like they named the Patriot Act, instead of, destruction of the Fourth Amendment Act. But the reason they came out with this is they said they needed more funding. Counties needed more funding for their EMS. Now, I agree. EMS is vital. It is one of the crucial things government should do. So it should be funded first out of their budget, not to be used as a political ploy to raise taxes. Stop funding dog parks. Stop funding automatic water. Stop funding bike trails. Stop funding murals on the side of buildings. Okay, fund the EMS first. All this other fluff can go away. And of course, they're painting me as being, anti-fire department, anti-police, and anti-EMS, which is absolutely ridiculous.
It's all they have. It's by design. It's to get people excited and wound up, because they're hoping that people aren't smart enough to look up the facts and see what's what. I really appreciate your time today to join and explain what's been going on and what the session's been like there in West Virginia. And so, Delegate Anders, I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely glad to be here, sir. Come back at any time, and I'm always glad to give you an update at any point. Hopefully we'll have a special session. I'll let you know if so.